guys, Larissa with BeCozi.com is here. Today I would like to show you how to make a merino wool blanket. And this is our blanket. That is a honeycomb stitch, and we are using our merino, super chunky merino wool. So it's incredibly soft and beautiful. We will be using ivory color, and I will write you information on the bottom, but we will need to use more than usual for this pattern because this pattern is very dense and tight comparing to simple pattern. So this blanket is 30 by 50. Let me show you the size. And it's a small blanket. It's enough to cover a medium-sized person sitting on the couch. But usually we're using about 4.5 pounds for a blanket like that. But for this one, we'll need to use 6.5 pounds, guys. So it's more yarn, it's more expensive, but this really worth it because this blanket is amazing. It looks really nice and beautiful, this pattern. So we will be using again ivory merino wool. You can find 32 colors of merino wool at our store, BeCozi.com. Super chunky merino wool is not available in any craft store, so after watching this video, if you want to make this blanket, you need to go to our website, BeCozi.com, and find this super chunky merino wool there. So if you have your yarn ready, let's get started. Okay guys, if you're ready, let's get started. So we'll place merino wool in front of us like that. This is the tail, this is working yarn. So working yarn goes on the top of the tail like that. And now we will be using this loop to make our first stitch. Insert your hand, grab working yarn and pull it out. Now hold these two parts of yarn with your right hand and pull the stitch with your left one. So we just made our first stitch. If you can see, it's pretty big, so we'll pull down the working yarn to make it about 2 inches, maybe 2.5. So what we're doing next, we will be inserting left hand inside the stitch, grab working yarn and pull it out. So now we have 2 stitches. You see that they're approximately the same size, so this is our goal, to try to make them approximately the same size. Now we will move our left hand and hold the stitch on the bottom, and then we will insert our hand, grab working yarn and pull it out. So we now have 3 stitches. What we will be doing next, we will be simply making a chain of these stitches like that until we have 16 stitches, guys. So remember, for this pattern you need a number of the stitches equal to or divided by 4, equal by 4. So in this case we will need 16, and that gives us the size of the blanket, the width of the blanket of 30 inches. Usually if you're using the simple pattern, simple knitting stitches, we would start with about 12 or 13 stitches for a width of 30, but this pattern is very tight, so we will need 4 stitches more to have the same width. So 16 stitches what we need. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. So we need 4 more stitches. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we have 16 stitches now. What we are doing next, we are turning this chain on another side like that, and now working yarn goes on the back, and we will be pulling out our first row. How we will be doing it? So this is our first stitch. We will insert our hand from the bottom, grab working yarn and pull it out. This is our first stitch. Starting the second stitch, we will be using these knots in the middle. So this is the stitch. There is a top part and bottom part of the stitch, and here is the this bump that we will be using. So what we're doing, we're lifting it, inserting our hand, grabbing working yarn and pulling it out. So we have 2 stitches now. The same here, this is the middle part of the stitch. Insert your hand, grab working yarn and pull it out. There you go. So what we are doing now, we are pulling out all 16 stitches that we have from the chain that we made, and then we will start our pattern. And for honeycomb pattern, you will always create the pattern when you're knitting from the left to the right, and when you're knitting from the right to the left, you will be simply knitting all stitches like we are doing now. So it's pretty simple pattern, but you need to be very attentive when you're making it. So here we are. We have our 16 stitches pulled out, our first row, and now we will start creating our pattern. So how we will be doing it? So you're taking these 2 stitches, and the second stitch goes on the top of the first one. So we are crisscrossing it, and then we are knitting this second stitch first, and then the first stitch second. Working yarn on the back, insert your hand, grab working yarn, pull it out. So we just crisscrossed and knitted first 2 stitches. Next 2 stitches we will be doing in the opposite direction. So we will first knit the second stitch, and then we will knit this first one in this pair of 2. See what we have? We crisscrossed them in the opposite direction, and that's pretty much what we will be doing with next 4. So here, this guys, we're knitting second stitch first, and second goes on the bottom, and for the next 2 we are knitting second stitch first and first stitch next. See what we have here? Crisscross in the opposite direction. We're working with 4 stitches at a time. So next one, the same way. First we are knitting second on the top, then first one on the bottom, and next 2, second on the bottom, first on the top. One more time, the last 4 stitches, guys. So second stitch comes first on the top, and then first one on the bottom, and the last 2 stitches we are knitting the last stitch or second stitch first, and then first in between these 2 on the top, like that. Here we are. This is our pattern. Basically that's what we will be doing every other row, and the next row it's simply knitting all stitches. So insert your hand, grab working yarn, pull it out, and do it to all 16 stitches. See, we're simply knitting, and you don't really see pattern yet. You will see it after you're done probably about like 6-8 rows, then it will be noticeable. So I showed how to make this pattern with BeCozi chunky chenille yarn, but now I'm showing how to do it with BeCozi Merino, super chunky Merino wool, and it's a very different look, guys. It's just looking so beautiful. Okay, so here we are. we just made our next row. And next row, guys, so make sure you following me. So this first row, when we started our pattern, we were crisscrossing these stitches out. What we will be doing now, we will be crisscrossing them inside. So we will not be crisscrossing like that as we did here. We will be crisscrossing in the opposite direction. See, you see how it goes, this honeycomb. That's what you need to follow when you are making this pattern. So in here we will be knitting second stitch on the back first, and then first stitch on the top. And you can see how the honeycomb is forming. Here, see, we were crisscrossing this direction. Now we will be crisscrossing in the opposite direction. You can see the honeycomb here. So second stitch on the top, first stitch on the bottom. Here we are. We just made our beautiful honeycomb, the first one. See, it's very nice looking. So now the second one. Again, just look at the pattern. If here you were crisscrossing this way, then now you need to do it the opposite way. So the second one first, and then the first one on the top. The next one, the same. Here, honeycomb is coming here, so second stitch goes first, and then the first goes second. So we will keep doing it the same way until we are done with all stitches in this row, creating our beautiful honeycomb. So again, it's pretty simple, but you just need to follow the pattern. So if here you were crisscrossing to the right, so here you will be crisscrossing to the left. Here we are. Okay, our last one. See, here it was going here in this row on the left. Now it should go to the right. So we're meeting this guy and now this guy. And the same here. This one was going to the right, so this stitch should go to the left, crisscrossing. Here we are. We are done creating our first honeycombs. So what we do next, as I mentioned, every time we're knitting from the right to the left, we are simply knitting all stitches. Insert your hand inside the stitch, grab working yarn and pull it out. And after this row, you will be repeating this pattern until you use all of your yarn. So first row of the honeycomb, you are crisscrossing to the right, and second row, after you knitted all rows, all stitches in the next row, you will be crisscrossing in the opposite direction. Just need to follow the pattern and you will make this beautiful blanket. Here we are. So we were crisscrossing to the right. It means that here we will be crisscrossing to the left. This stitch going to the left. See, like that. So we will be knitting this stitch first and this stitch second. Now let's look what we had here. Here it was to the left, now it goes to the right. So this stitch goes on the top, this one on the bottom, crisscross. Here we are. And the same way here, it was to the right, now the stitch goes crisscross to the left. Crisscross and knit. Don't miss stitches, guys, because then the whole pattern will be ruined. So to the left, now to the right. Crisscross, knitting this first, this one second. Left, now it was right, now it's going left. Here we are. So that will be all of our pattern, guys. You just alternating the stitches, crisscrossing them every second row. You're creating your pattern every time you're knitting from the left to the right. Remember, when you are knitting from the right to the left, it's always just simple knitting pattern. And then you're just looking how your stitches are laying there, and you are crisscrossing in the opposite direction. Here we are. Let me show you one more row, and then we will just simply continue knitting until we use all yarn, and then I will come back and show you how to finish or cast off. So here we are, almost there. Almost there. Here we are, last stitch. So here we are. See, this is our honeycomb. Here it's to the left, here's to the right. So we need to do it in the opposite direction now. So see, to the left means you're crisscrossing to the right, and you're knitting first stitch, second stitch, and then first. And the same with the next one. If it was to the right, now it's going to the left. That's it. So this is all pattern. Simple, but you just need to be very attentive what stitch you're making. And now you can see all these beautiful combs. And I will keep knitting until I'm done with the yarn, and then I will come back and show you what to do next. Okay guys, so we are done with all of our yarn. You see these beautiful honeycombs, look amazing on merino wool. So what we will be doing now, we will be casting off. So for casting off, you need to keep about 3 lengths of the yarn left, lengths, actually 3 widths, I'm sorry. So 1, 2 and 3. So that's what we will be using. 1, 2, 3, actually we have 4. I'm sorry, 4. We need 4. We usually use 3, but for this blanket, because it's longer, it's using more yarn, we need 4. So we have 4 lengths, 4 widths, I'm sorry. And what we are doing now, we are taking 2 stitches together, and then we are grabbing working yarn and pulling it out. So we now have 1 stitch made from 2. Put the stitch back on your hand, and then at next stitch you have 2. Then working yarn goes through this 2. So we just knitted 2 into 1 again. So then we will just keep doing it, 2 stitches knitting into 1 until we are done with the whole blanket. Try not to skip any stitches, because then you will need to unravel it and fix the problem. But for now we will be simply knitting 2 stitches at a time until we are done with whole row. Here we are, almost here. Here we are, 2, and we have right enough to finish. So this is 2 last stitches, and then this is our last stitch, and I have a very short tail here, so this tail goes inside this last stitch, and then you're pulling yarn like that. So we just finished our blanket, guys. So this little piece of yarn need to be tucked in on the back. I usually use this felting needle and felting mat to felt this tail to a last stitch or to any stitch, so like that. Tuck it in, then place it on the felting mat, and then carefully felt this tail inside the stitch. Be careful not to poke yourself with this needle because it's very, very sharp. Here we are. This way the tail will not be getting out, it will be holding really nicely. And then we can do the same with the bottom of the blanket. Here is the bottom, and we have this tail here where we started. So the tail goes underneath the chain, 1 and 2, and then we can go back, and then we can tuck it in anywhere under any stitch like this. See, we hide it. And now using our felting mat and felting this tail inside the stitch. When felting, it attaches to the other stitch really nicely, and it will be holding very nice when you're using the blanket like this. So we're done, guys. Our beautiful blanket, honeycomb merino wool in ivory, is ready. You should try this pattern for sure. It's amazingly beautiful and looks so nice and beautiful. We have 32 colors of merino wool available, and you can find them at BeCozi.com. Stay home and be cozy.